Welcome back, Summoners. Today, we are going to be going over what you should expect at the Riftbound Regional Qualifier in Sydney happening this weekend. Before we get into anything, I want to give some credit to Riot because, guess what? They updated Day 2 pricing. Nearly every single person I know who was religiously traveling to these events was like, hey, we need better pricing for people who make Day 2, and they did it. They added prize wall tickets to top 64, they gave top 128 a playmat, they gave prize wall tickets to, obviously, higher placing people. This is a step in the right direction. Although, there is some stuff that I'd still like to see. I'd like to continue the trend of event-specific promos. Obviously, we just get the Poppy that everyone has access to now, whereas in the past, we got, event-specific stuff, like the Bone Shiver. I think that was really good, so I don't want us to move away from that. This is an excellent step in the right direction. If you've never watched one of my What to Expect videos, then you should find out. We're going to be doing a tier list. These are the decks that I expect to do well, perform okay, or underperform relative to the meta. Now, unfortunately, typically we have Dimitri with us. We went to record, his microphone cord decided to just shit the bed, and here we are. So everyone take a moment of silence for Dimitri. All right, let's get right into it. So how this tier list framework is built is we have the potential winners. These are decks I can see winning the whole event. We have top 8 material. These are decks that I would not be surprised if they made top 8. In fact, I would be pretty surprised if most of these did not make top 8. We'll put it that way. For top 64, no top 8. These are decks that I expect to see throughout the top 64, probably not making top 8. Day 2, obviously, decks that are making Day 2, but not 64ing. And then doesn't Day 2 is pretty obvious. These are decks I don't expect to Day 2. So let's kick it off with Ari. Ari is a deck that I think got pretty wholly power creeped by Vex. I think we could see Ari make Day 2. There's a lot of Ari specialists out there that have done nothing since the release of this game but play Ari, and I think they're probably good enough to play the game and get Day 2, but I don't expect to see this in top 64. Annie, this is one of those decks where it's like, who's playing it? If Prismat's on it, then obviously, but for like just the average deck, I could see this deck in 64. It's at the very top of this tier. I want to reiterate that. It's at the very top of this tier. I would be surprised if I see it in top 8, piloted by someone who isn't Prismat specifically. Azir. This is one of our first top 8 decks. I think this deck got a lot in the new 2-drop. Draven is significantly less represented, which was like the boogeyman for this deck, as well as, only having 6 good opening plays on the draw or on the play. So this deck is really good. And this is likely what I'm going to be piloting at Vancouver myself. Darius doesn't, Day 2, but no 64. There was a lot of these at Atlanta. I played 2 of them. I drew with one. Game went really slow. There's a whole lot to be said there. I talk about it in the vlog, which you can go check out, but I don't want to get into that. And then the other one I beat, and I just don't get this deck. It's just like spawn a bunch of dudes and hope it's enough. I don't know. It doesn't have enough going for it, in my opinion. Diana. I see Diana in top 8 material. I think this deck is really good. I think Hwei maxing is a valid strategy. Cheating mana is obviously very good, as we know with Annie. And then you could use Hwei to cheat the draws. I think this deck is absolutely excellent. I also want to call out that this tier list is not in any order. Like, I'm not saying Azir is better than Diana. I think it is. And I'm not saying Arya is better than Darius. I think it is, but that's not the purpose of these orderings. I'm just tossing them in there how I see fit. Draven. I have seen tier lists where people are putting this in, like, Dark Horses or, like, tier 2, tier 3 deck, and that is crazy to me. I think this deck is still very good. If we had to put it in order, I think it would still be here. And I would not be surprised if Draven won the event. I think this is the fair play to put it in top 8 material. This deck is still insane, right? Like, let's just make that very clear. This deck is still insane. It did not get worse. It got less represented because people want to play the new toys. We've been playing Draven for 4 months now, 3.5 months now. 5 months for those of us who was testing on TCG Arena before the set officially released. People just want to try new stuff. Ezreal. I'm going to do a bit of a hot take here. I think this deck is really good. Every time I play it, I'm like, man, this deck continues to impress me. Even against pilots who I don't think particularly pilot the deck well, it still impresses me. I would not be surprised to see an Ezreal in top 8. Fiora. Top 64. It's an Aurora deck, right? You can have an insane weekend and finish X3 and make top 64. Just draw Aurora. Draw your ramp cards, draw Aurora. You also have a no power cost chosen champion you can leverage. Garen. I see Garen in top 64. Crazy to say. If you asked me that, a month and a half ago before Elder Dragon got released, I'd be like, haha, you're tweaking. Not anymore. Elder Dragon is enough of a buff to get this guy into top 64. Now, he's not going to top 8. I think, you're playing Aurora with a blank legend. Elder Dragon is sufficient to probably get you to top 64. Get someone into that top 64 slot. Irelia, every time I play against this deck, I'm like, if they don't draw Stellacorn, I win the game. If they draw Stellacorn, and move it more than once, I lose the game. I'm still very unimpressed by this deck. It's just a math deck, and I think people, generally speaking, can figure out the math, and I think they have, but Stellacorn is a good enough card to get us there most of the time, and it also kind of noob checks some of the newer decks, and I think because a lot of people are going to be on these new decks, that Irelia, one or two Irelias could have a very good bracket and get into top 8. Ivern, Sag, goes down here. This deck does like absolutely nothing. Sorry, Marshall, the Riftbound Report. I know this is your baby and you've been working on it a lot, but I tried it. My wife wanted to play it. We put it together and she was like, wow, this deck does nothing. And I'm like, yep, you live by the hold, you die by the hold with this deck. Jax, I think this deck is still good enough to make day 2. I have a good friend, Pseudo Oracle, who played this in Atlanta and did very well going into day 2. Just barely missing the metal card. I think every time I play this deck, I just wish it had a movement card. One good movement card would get like if I just had a Boots in this deck, it would push it way up there for me. Jin, I want to put it in doesn't day 2 because this deck sucks, but there's probably going to be enough people on it that one person gets a good bracket and goes X2. So I'm going to put it here to cope and be safe. Let's just be real. I think this deck sucks. I want it down here, but I'm going to be objective here. Jinx, another thing I expected day 2, but probably not top 64. You could just play this deck as red, purple, good pile, and it's still a good deck, right? Red, purple is still a dominant colorway. Yeah, there's not much to add on there. I am in a team full of Jinx specialists, so I have to test against this deck all the time. Kai'Sa. I think Kai'Sa is still top 8 material. Maybe a bit of a hot take. Maybe my good friend Eric has got worms in my brain with this. I still think it's a pretty good deck. I think it has a okay matchup spread into the meta. We got Jin to, give us more value-efficient monsters. We get to play the deck a little differently because Draven isn't such a menace. We can play a couple more units that give us some extra value out of our cards. And yeah, I mean, that's really all there is to say. Kha'Zix. I'm going to have a lot of decks in the top 8 material here. See, we're already at 6. This is orange-purple. What does that mean? You could just play Aurora and the deck is crazy. That's enough. That is enough. That is literally enough for this deck, is just play an Aurora slot pile, and it's going to get you there. LeBlanc. One of the first decks we're going to put in potential winners. This deck is absolutely bonkers. People have finally started figuring out the Echo tech. This deck is insane. Insane ceiling. Just don't miss your 2-drop. Or don't miss your turn 1 play, should I say. You cannot miss your turn 1 play in this deck, or the game's effectively over. But Hook is insane. Karthus, having a Ruined Rex on the field with Karthus and Death Grip in your hand, giving yourself reaction speed 8 damage for 2 energy is absolutely bonkers. Lee Sin, I could see a Lee Sin in top 64. Once again, what colorway is it? It's orange. We could just play an Aurora slot pile. Leona. I don't think Leona day 2s. I think this set, you got some very, very interesting tools, but I don't know if it's enough to get you there. I still think you hard lose into most of the meta. I don't think you are fast enough and resilient enough to reliably beat Aurora. If you run into Draven, and now instead of just having Rebuke, they have Rebuke, Starcrossed, Diana gets to play Existential Dread. Come on. This deck does not like having its units put back to the hand, and we have a billion different ways to do that now. That is why a lot of decks are moving Forerunner to the side. Lilia, I'm going to have it. I know I hasn't said I wasn't putting these in specific order, but I'm going to put Lilia at the very top here of top 64, no top 8. Every time I play this deck, it continues to impress me, but I feel like it's not quite there. Sprite Fountain, Sprite Burst, Janna are all insane cards in this deck, but it feels like it's missing something. Maybe it's just the lists I've been testing are not optimized. That is entirely possible. That is where my opinion is at right now. That's what you guys are watching this video for. Lucian. I think Lucian is another deck that we could see top 64, but not top 8. I think it has okay matchup into some of the meta. You run into Aurora, you really just have to see Trinity Force, and then you can start scoring 3 points per turn, put them on a much faster clock, because you just sit your guy at the battlefield. Like, instead of doing the normal Lucian thing where you pull it back, like, you just park him at the battlefield, score 2 points there, 1 point on the other one, and you're cooking with Crisco. Even better if you can find full combo, and you can score, do that in and out and be safe. You have Repulse now for when the Elder Dragon drops to effectively give you another free turn with full combo where they can interact with you because of Trinity Force and the combo. If the Aurora players hit Baron, you're not really worried about it because you're probably not winning from doing a double conquer anyway. You're probably winning through combo. So I think this deck is positioned pretty okay. It still has some pretty unfavorable matchups. Lux, I've been perpetually low on this deck. It's Victor Light. I think Victor lost a lot of equity in this meta. I'm going to see Lux in day 2, but no top 64. MF, my girl, the Pirate, right up there with potential winners. The only thing I want to say is we historically have seen Aurora fumble when you start getting into Top Cut, because with Swiss, you have a little bit of forgivability where you can have a match where you just totally miss. You don't draw Aurora, you don't draw Ramp, you don't draw, your dig cards. Well, in Top Cut, you have one of those, Top Cut's over for you. Like, that's it. Thanks, top 8. Woohoo, congratulations. But I think with all of the new consistency cards, it might be enough to get her there. And we'll go ahead and just put Sivir up there too, because, these are interchangeable for me. My whole team makes fun of me because I like MF, and they're like, oh, set one mechanic with ganking, but whatever, they can flame me. I like ganking, sue me. That's why you want to play Boots and Sivir, so Orange Purple Aurora is pretty good. The reason these are over Kha'Zix is because the leader ability interacts more favorably with just how your deck works, whereas XP in Kha'Zix is actually factually dead, but it just doesn't matter. Ornn. I'm going to put Ornn right under Lilia here. This is another deck that, I've done a lot of testing into, and I haven't lost to it yet. I have 10, 15 matches into this aggro Ornn build that's going around. Every time they play it, I'm like, oh wow, this deck's really cool, but I haven't lost yet, so I don't know what that tells me. I don't know if it's just I keep playing decks that have a good matchup into it, or if this deck just doesn't have enough to get over the hump. You play the super aggro build with, Sprite Fountain, Sprite Burst, Drop Border, and you just don't have to recycle cards because of your legend, so it gives you a little bit of favorability over Lilia in that aspect, and you still get to just play the Ornn. You play the Ornn that scries 5 and lets you pick a gear, so you're always seeing your gear. It's a pretty cool deck. I'll be honest with you. Proving Grounds Yi. This is another deck I can see potentially winning. I think it would be as mid-range Yi, not Aurora Yi. And I know that sounds crazy, but a good friend of mine, Mr. Toolshed, posted about this. Aurora Yi is still the best Aurora deck when you don't see Aurora, but it's massively unfavored in the Aurora mirror. And I think you're going to see enough Aurora mirrors where taking Aurora might be unattractive. But you can play the mid-range version, still get to play the unfair cards. Good friend E3TCG made a video on how insane Rengar is in this deck. You could just pass with 5 mana open and your opponent's like, great, can I go into a battlefield and deal with 8 defending? No? Okay, well then I just have to get time walked. You still get to do camel shenanigans, you play the Triforce, so you can try to score multiple points per turn on the Aurora players and speed up the clock. I think it's my kind of sleeper pick for this. I think people are undervaluing this deck pretty heavily. Same with Draven. And I would not be surprised to see Proving Grounds Yi in top 8 or even winning the whole thing. Here we are again with our other Aurora slot piles. It's orange. It's enough to get you there. Signature is pretty good too. Time walk. Put your card on top of your deck and make you play it again. There have been some rumblings about this deck on ye old Twitter. And I don't know if this is mass hallucination trying to fool the masses into playing a bad deck. I'm not seeing it. Rossum, if you have some sauce and you just haven't shared it with the class, I'm sorry for being disrespectful to your guy, but I don't know what this, it's red, purple, good pile. So it's in the category for Jinx with me. But I just, other than the Wisp that makes you, kick a card from your opponent's hand, I just don't see how his legend favorably interacts with the rest of the colorway. So he's down here for me. Rek'Sai. This is another deck I think is a sleeper pick. There is a lot of interesting interactions with this deck. Fresh Beans, my preview card, interacts favorably with this deck. I think Vi is an insane new piece that it got. Otherwise, you still get to play Hook and Book. Not hooking, but using your legend to just dig and play the good cards in your deck. You just play 39 good cards that interact favorably with your opponent or with your cards. And it's a good strategy, I think. I'll just be straight up. I think it's a good strategy that you should consider when you're going to these events. Renata. We can clear that up with a quickness. We can absolutely clear that up with a quickness. Same with Rumble. I don't need to talk about these decks. They just don't do enough. In Rumble, your best card is Ferris Forerunner, and now there's 5 new ways with spells to put Forerunner back in the hand. So, a shout out to my rat players. I'm sorry, guys. Riot just does not like you guys very much. Rengar. This is an interesting deck. I want to put it up here in top 64, but no top 8. Good friend Gopher has been testing this a lot, and it seems interesting. It seems like a very good aggro strategy. It interacts positively with Fresh Beans to give you a draw engine in a colorway that does traditionally not have very good draws, so that's good. The Thrill of the Hunt cheese kind of hit it pretty good, and it's very easy to exploit a lot of hands that Rengar tends to draw. Because of that, I have it here. Set. This is the best of the Aurora slop piles, in my opinion. I think the Legend is absolutely insane, and I think this is still fine as a mid-range deck, playing like the Fey Dragon stuff. This deck is really good. Yeah, I don't really have much else to comment on it. I think this deck is a fine pick. Teemo, I'm going to see it day 2, but I would be very surprised to see a Teemo in top 64. Still lost Fight or Flight. You got some like okay stuff from set 3, nothing absolutely bonkers. Mundo's still your big guy. You can still side a Mundo, but once again, we're back on the strategy of having 50,000 cards that put it back to your hand. Vex. This deck is way higher than I ever thought I was going to put it. This is the new come and get me, sit on the battlefield, draw multiple cards per turn deck, and it is toxic. It is very unfun to play against this deck, especially with the Vile Maw. I would play against Ari 7 hours a day. Rather than play one Vex. I will say this deck can be exploitable. You know, if they don't draw good enough for them to defend their like turn 3 tap out turn, where because it's like 2-drop, like fan into battlefield, drop Vex, and then hide a card maybe, hide like a back off, and then turn 3 they like slam a Sona or slam like a Shadow in the back, try to move to the battlefield, or they just develop a couple units in the back. If you can break them off that turn, that generally means you win the game. And if you are not able to back them off that turn, that generally means you lose the game. They just draw so many cards. And when they get to the point where they're on both battlefields, passing with 10 mana up, with fans and shadows and hidden cards, you're just not breaking both. They're drawing cards, especially on the Grove game, which is brutal. They're drawing 3 cards per turn. And like you just feel this force to go to their battlefield, and then they own you with all the combat interaction. Vi. This deck is like make Vi big and hope it's enough. Like that's the whole deck. Make Vi big and hope it's enough. When they tap out, like Hidden Blade it, rebuke it, Star-Crossed it, Existential Dread, put it back in their hand or kill it. And the deck's done. Like it completely fizzles after that. Victor, I was very high on this deck, and I almost brought it to Atlanta. I'm glad I didn't. I could see Victor in top 64. I think he got some interesting new tools. I still think the kill everything strategy is pretty good against especially some of the decks that, 1 unit per turn, especially some of the decks that are like 1 unit per turn pass. I still think Victor has a very good Aurora matchup. It's not crazy to say this, but I don't think it's like actually factually auto win anymore, because like Elder Dragon is enough of a stabilizer to get you there. Volley Chad. I love this deck. The Manches, Miracle Volley, Volley Aurora. I think this deck is incredible. Laggy, obviously, on my team is the Volley Rare Specialist. He has been cooking some absolutely insane lists. Very high on this deck. And at worst, you're just playing Aurora, which is enough. XP, like, there's just no reason to play this Legend over the Proving Grounds E. Like, whether you're playing mid-range, you're going for, this XP shenanigans, or you're playing Aurora. Like, the reason to play XP E is because there's 2 separate metal cards, and you're just playing Aurora, so it's like, the +2, generally speaking, doesn't matter that much, and that's why. That's my thought process. And then last but not least, Yasuo. I see Yasuo making day 2. You could argue for him in top 64, but I just don't care enough to. He does some really cool stuff, got some new toys, but at worst, it's another green-purple pile. And if you're going for strictly wanting to play a better deck, you could play Irelia, you could play Vex. They are just actually factually better decks. If you're wanting a metal card, then you play Yasuo. I think that's really the only reason to play him. Do you agree with me? Do you think my takes are garbage? Do you disagree? Put them in the comments below. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all the funny stuff, and I will see you guys at RQ Vancouver.